They had no idea I had already signed the paperwork. For 3 months, I kept quiet. I watched, I listened, and I waited. My son-in-law walked through my house like he owned it, adjusting the thermostat without asking, parking in my spot in the driveway, making comments at dinner about how this place could really use updating. And my daughter just smiled. Every single time she just smiled. Every single time she just smiled. I'm 67 years old. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the county. I designed drainage systems, bridge supports, storm infrastructure, the kind of work nobody sees until something breaks. I retired with a full pension and benefits. I know how to build things meant to last. I know how to read the ground before you pour the foundation. So when my son-in-law sat across from me at my own kitchen table last April and said what he said, I already knew what I was going to do. I just didn't tell him. My daughter's name is Claire. She's 34. I raised her alone after her mother passed from cancer when Claire was 11. I worked overtime for years to keep us in this house, a 4-bedroom colonial in Glendale, right outside Phoenix. Paid off the mortgage 9 years ago. The house is mine, has always been mine, and my name is the only name on the deed. Claire met her husband Owen 6 years ago. He was charming then. I'll give him that. He had this way of leaning in when he listened to you, nodding like every word you said mattered. He called me sir for the first 2 years. He shook my hand firmly. He brought a bottle of wine to every dinner. I liked him. That's the part that still gets me sometimes. I genuinely liked the man. They got married 4 years ago in Sedona. Small ceremony. Beautiful venue. I paid for most of it. About $18,000. Not because they asked me to. Because Claire was my only child, and it was her wedding, and I wanted her to have the day she'd always talked about. I didn't keep a ledger. I didn't expect anything back. That's not how I operate. They moved into a rental apartment in Scottsdale. Owen was working in commercial real estate. Claire was a dental hygienist. They seemed fine, comfortable, happy even. Then about 2 years ago, things started to shift. Owen's firm downsized. He lost his position. He picked up some freelance consulting work, but nothing steady. Claire's income alone wasn't covering their rent, and their lease was coming up for renewal. They came to me in November, both of them, sitting on my couch, holding hands, and asked if they could move in temporarily, just until Owen got back on his feet. I said yes without hesitation. I had the space. The upstairs had 3 empty bedrooms. I told them to take the large guest suite. It had its own bathroom, a walk-in closet, plenty of room. I told Owen he could use the den as a home office. I told Claire she could redecorate however she liked. I meant every word of it. The first month was fine. We ate dinner together most nights. I taught Owen how to use the grill. Claire started watching old movies with me on Sunday evenings, the way she used to before she grew up and moved out. It felt, for a moment, like something I hadn't realized I'd missed. Then February came and something changed. It started small. Owen began making suggestions, not requests. Suggestions, the kind phrased in a way that made you feel unreasonable for not agreeing. He thought the living room furniture was dated. He thought the kitchen needed new appliances. He mentioned twice that the master bedroom had much better natural light than the guest suite. The first time, I didn't respond. The second time, I said I'd think about it. I wasn't thinking about it. Claire stopped pushing back on anything he said. I noticed that too. When Owen spoke, she went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Careful quiet. There's a difference, and I know it because I spent 30 years around people who'd learned to say nothing when it was safest. By March, Owen had stopped calling me sir. He called me by my first name, Leonard, in a way that felt slightly too casual, like he'd decided we were equals in a situation where he was living rent-free in my house. He started leaving his equipment in the garage without asking. A set of golf clubs, a mini-fridge, boxes I didn't recognize. I didn't say anything. I watched. One Saturday morning in early April, I was out in the backyard drinking coffee. It was quiet. The desert light that time of year is something low, amber, clean. I was reading the paper the old-fashioned way, actual newsprint, something I still do out of habit. Owen came outside, didn't say good morning, poured himself a glass of water from the outdoor tap, and leaned against the patio railing. He said, "Leonard, Claire and I have been talking." I put down the paper. "We're thinking about starting a family," he said. "And with a baby coming, we're going to need more space. The guest suite is fine for now, but realistically, we need the master bedroom. The light's better, the bathroom's bigger. It's closer to where the nursery would be." I looked at him. "Claire's pregnant?" He waved his hand slightly. "Not yet, but we're planning for it." I said, "I see." He said, "We figured you'd be fine moving into one of the other rooms. The one at the end of the hall is quiet. Or there's the bonus room downstairs. The bonus room downstairs." That's what he called it. It's a converted storage space off the laundry room, no window, no closet, a ceiling fan that rattles when it runs. I picked up my coffee. I took a sip. I said, "Let me think about that." He nodded like it was settled and went back inside. I sat there for a long time after he left. Long enough for the light to change, long enough for the coffee to go cold. Here's the thing about being 67 that nobody tells you when you're younger. You stop reacting the way people expect you to. When you're 40, anger comes fast and hot. When you're 67, you've watched enough things fall apart to know that the first move is almost never the right one. You get quiet, you get patient, and you start thinking several steps ahead. I called my attorney that same afternoon. His name is Francis Delgado, and we've known each other since our kids were in Little League together. I didn't tell him everything that day. I just asked him a few questions about property rights, guest residency, and what my options were if I ever needed to make a change to a living arrangement where family members were present. Frank asked me what was going on. I said, "Nothing yet. I just want to know the landscape." He said he understood, and he told me exactly what I needed to know. I didn't do anything visible for the next 3 weeks. I made dinner. I watched baseball. I asked Claire how work was going. She seemed tired in a way she didn't used to. When I asked her once, privately, if everything was all right, she said, "I'm fine, Dad. Owen's just been stressed." I nodded. I didn't push. But I started paying attention to different things. Owen made calls in the garage. I wasn't listening at the door. I was doing yard work and the garage window was open. I heard enough. He was talking to someone about equity positioning, and when the title clears, I didn't know what that meant yet, but it sat wrong with me. 2 nights later, I was in my office going through some old tax files when my email pinged. It was a forwarded message. Claire had accidentally CC'd me on something meant for Owen. The original email was from a real estate attorney's office. It was about something called a quitclaim deed. I read it twice. Then I called Frank. For those who don't know, and I didn't know the details until Frank explained it, a quitclaim deed is a legal document that transfers property ownership without the usual guarantees. It's sometimes used between family members or in estate planning. It can also be used to transfer ownership without a full sale, quickly and quietly, if the person signing it doesn't fully understand what they're giving away. My name had been filled in as the grantor. Owen's name was the grantee. I sat in my office for a very long time. I looked at the photograph on my desk, me and Claire at her high school graduation. She was laughing. I had my arm around her. We both looked happy in a way that feels very far away now. I want to be clear about something. I don't believe Claire fully understood what she was part of. I've turned this over in my mind many times, and I keep coming back to the same place. She was exhausted, she was under pressure, and she was with a man who was very good at making things sound reasonable when they weren't. That doesn't excuse everything, but it explains some of it. Owen, on the other hand, Owen knew exactly what he was doing. The next evening, they asked to talk with me after dinner. We sat in the living room, same couch where they'd asked to move in a year and a half before. Owen was calm, organized, like he prepared. He said they'd been doing some research and wanted to talk about formalizing the arrangement. He said that since they were planning to start a family and had been contributing to the household, he used that phrase, contributing to the household. He used that phrase, contributing to the household. Though neither of them had paid $1 in rent, it would make sense to have something in writing. He slid a folder across the coffee table. Inside was the quit-claim deed. I looked at it. I looked at Hip. I looked at him. I looked at Claire, who was looking at her hands. I said, "I'll need some time to review this." Owen said, "Of course, no rush." There was a rush. Frank had already told me that the real estate attorney's office had scheduled a notarization appointment for the following Friday. They were expecting me to sign within the week. I took the folder to my room. I closed the door. I called Frank again. Then I made 2 more calls, one to a different attorney, one to a financial advisor I'd worked with for years. By 11 o'clock that night, I had a clear picture of what was happening and exactly what I was going to do about it. I want to describe what it feels like to discover that someone is trying to take your home from you. Not a stranger. Your daughter. The child you raised alone. The person you walked down the aisle. It doesn't feel the way you'd expect. Not like rage, not like panic. It feels like the ground has been replaced with something that looks exactly like the ground, but isn't. You're standing on it and it's holding you, but if you look down, there's nothing there. I didn't sleep much that week. But I was very busy. Frank filed the appropriate paperwork to formally establish the property status and put a legal hold on any transfer proceedings. He also helped me draft a written notice, official, calm, precise, that outlined the terms of their continued stay in my home, rent. 30 days notice required before any modifications to living arrangements. No additions to the property, no alterations, no documents submitted in my name without my written notarized consent. 2 copies, both signed by witnesses. I also contacted the county recorder's office to confirm no documents had already been filed without my knowledge. They hadn't. I was in time. That Thursday evening, one day before their scheduled notarization appointment, I asked them to join me in the living room after dinner. Owen came in relaxed. He thought I was going to sign. I handed them each a copy of Frank's letter. Owen read about 4 lines and his expression went flat. Not angry, flat. The kind of flat that happens when someone realizes the plan they've been building quietly for months has just been taken apart in front of them. He said, "What is this?" I said, "It's a formal notice. The terms are outlined clearly. I think you'll find it's all legally sound." He said, "Leonard, we're family." I said, "I know. That's why I gave you a written copy instead of having this conversation through attorneys." Claire hadn't spoken. She was reading the letter slowly, more slowly than Owen had. When she finished, she set it down and looked at me, and something in her face had shifted. She looked young, suddenly, the way she used to when she was small, and something had confused her. She said, "Dad, I didn't think it would." I said, "I know, sweetheart." And I did know. That's what made it the hardest part. Owen stood up. His jaw was tight. He said something about consulting his own attorney, about how this wasn't the end of the conversation. I told him he was welcome to do that. I told him Frank's contact information was at the bottom of the letter if anyone wanted to communicate further in writing. He left the room. Claire stayed. We sat there for a while in the quiet. She said, "He told me it was just paperwork, that it was a formality, that it would make things easier for everyone." I said, "I know the kind of things people say when they're asking you to sign something." She started to cry. Not dramatically, just quietly, in the way adults cry when they're ashamed and tired at the same time. I didn't say much. I handed her a box of tissues from the side table. I let her sit there. She asked me if I hated her. I said no, and I meant it. What followed was uncomfortable, but it was also, in a strange way, clarifying. Owen retained an attorney. That attorney looked at Frank's filing and the property records and apparently gave him a very straightforward assessment. Because Owen stopped pursuing the deed transfer within 2 weeks, there was nothing to pursue. Everything was airtight. They moved out the following month. Claire found a smaller rental apartment in Tempe. Owen eventually found contract work with a different real estate firm. I don't know the full details, and I haven't asked. Claire and I still talk, not as often as before, and not as easily. There's a layer of something between us now that I hope will thin over time, but I don't pretend isn't there. She called me on my birthday in June. We talked for 40 minutes about nothing important. It was a good 40 minutes. I'll take it. The house is still mine. The deed has my name on it, the same as it's always had. I had the locks rekeyed, updated the alarm system, and spent a Saturday painting the back porch the color I'd always meant to, a deep green, almost the color of sage. My neighbor stopped by when he saw me up on the ladder and helped me finish the second coat. There's a lot I could still be angry about. There are nights when I lie awake and go back through the timeline, when things shifted, what I missed, what I should have seen sooner. I think about the $18,000 I spent on that wedding. I think about the dinners I cooked, the space I gave freely, the trust I extended without conditions. But here's where I keep landing after all of it. I didn't lose my house. I didn't sign anything I couldn't take back. I moved fast when it mattered. I asked for help when I needed it, and I held my ground without losing my dignity. At 67, after everything, a career, a marriage, a loss, raising a child alone, I still know how to protect what I built. And Owen, the last I heard, he was renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Mesa. No equity, no deed, just a monthly payment like everyone else who doesn't own anything. Some things teach themselves. If you're watching this and you have a family member living in your home, listen to me carefully. Know your rights. Know them before you need them. Talk to an attorney, not after something goes wrong, but now, while everything seems fine. Because people who want to take what you've built don't announce it. They compliment your house. They stay for dinner. They shake your hand and call you sir, until they don't. I'm Leonard Marsh. I'm 67 years old. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere. I've had a lot of time to sit with all of this. More time than I expected, honestly. The house is quiet now in a way it wasn't before they moved in, and some mornings I'll be out on the back porch with my coffee, and I'll catch myself thinking through the whole thing again. Not with anger, not anymore, but with the kind of clarity that only comes after the dust has fully settled. Here's what I keep coming back to. Owen didn't fail because he was unlucky. He failed because he built something on a foundation he didn't own and assumed I wouldn't notice. That's not bad luck. That's a choice. Every step he took, the slow familiarity, the casual comments about the thermostat, the folder he slid across my coffee table, those were decisions. And decisions have weight. They land somewhere, eventually. I'm not a man who believes the universe is keeping score, but I do believe that how you treat people, especially people who open their door to you, says something true about your character. And character doesn't stay hidden. It shows up, sooner or later, in the things you do when you think nobody's watching. Owen made his calls in the garage with the window open. He forwarded emails without checking who was copied. He sat across from me at my own table and smiled while he handed me a document designed to take my home. He thought he was being careful. He wasn't being careful. He was being himself. And Claire, I've thought about her more than anyone. She's my daughter. She's the person I raised. I spent a long time asking myself where I went wrong, whether I'd given her something she needed or failed to give her something she needed more. I don't have a clean answer to that. What I do know is that she was not a bad person who did a bad thing. She was a tired person who stopped paying attention to what she was agreeing to. That's a different problem, and it's one she's going to have to work out for herself. What I can tell you, and I mean this plainly, without any pretense, is that the thing that protected me wasn't luck, and it wasn't money, and it wasn't connections. It was paying attention. It was the discipline to stay quiet when every instinct said to react. It was 31 years of professional life that taught me you read the ground before you pour the foundation. You don't skip that step because things look stable on the surface. If you're older and you have family living under your roof, here's the only thing I know for certain. Dignity is not given to you by other people. You maintain it yourself through the decisions you make when things get hard. I could have shouted at Owen. I could have thrown them out that same night. I could have let my anger do the work. Instead, I called Frank. I gathered what I needed, and I handled it the way I'd handle any structural problem, methodically, without drama, with the goal of a lasting solution. That's the only philosophy I have. Do the work. Know your rights. Hold your ground quietly. Don't hand your house to someone who's still learning your name. The deed still reads Leonard Marsh. That's enough for me.